What's going on, everybody? Nick Whalen and Joe Bartel here with you. It's the RotoWire Fantasy Football Pod, rolling through another off-season episode. Joe, we took last week off, packed schedules. I was traveling, but we are locked back in, man. You got a mock draft that just hit the site that I'm really excited to talk about. Maybe the most trades I've ever seen in a mock draft, and I have probably read hundreds, if not maybe into the thousands of mock drafts throughout my illustrious career as an extremely amateur NFL draft analyst. So we'll break all that down. Take a look at some of the interesting betting markets out there. I want to talk about Jaxson Dart specifically in his draft position, but we'll get to that as the show rolls along. We are brought to you by Ultra GM, by the way. Have you ever dreamed of managing your favorite pro football team? Do you watch your team and think the GM got it wrong again? I do. I know I do. Do you think you could do better? Here's your chance to prove it. Introducing Ultra GM, a revolutionary new take on fantasy football that makes you the general manager of your favorite team. Start with your team's full roster and build it through the draft, free agency, trades, and even the practice squad to create your ideal team. No fantasy football platform or GM simulator has ever provided the degree of realism and engagement that Ultra GM offers, and none has ever given you the opportunity to manage the team that you love and care for the most. Compete against family, friends, even your team's real GM to see who is the Ultra GM. Think you could do better than your team's GM? Well, go do it right now. Visit ultragm.com to prove it. All right, Joe. Got a good question in the chat, so we'll kick it off here. I wanted to hit this at some point anyway. Might as well dive right in before we start getting into your mock draft. Michael says, "Hi, Joe and Nick." Hello, Michael. "I can't wait to hear about the rumors of Andrews being traded and wonder if it will involve a first-round pick." I will say, Joe, I don't think it will involve a first-round pick, right? No, right? And, Mark Andrews has 1 year left on his deal. There was this is something, there's been some smoke around this throughout the offseason. 2 months ago or so, we were talking about Mark Andrews trades. And I will say, I think this is completely separate from anything that happened in that playoff game. I don't think this is, hey, you didn't catch that pass, sorry, you're out of here. I think this is all about having a natural replacement already on the roster in Isaiah Likely. It's about Mark Andrews' contract being up after next season. It's about planning for the future and, maybe not wanting to give another top dollar contract to a guy who's going to be 30. But Eric DeCosta, didn't really do a whole lot this week to quiet any Mark Andrews rumors. So is this something you could see happening before the draft, during the draft, shortly after? Because DeCosta knows what he's doing. The Ravens as an organization know what they're doing. They're not just throwing things out there all willy-nilly. So I'm starting to expect that this is going to get done at some point. You're much better than me when it comes to, forecasting what kind of draft capital would be on the table in a deal like this.
Yeah. So, we discussed this, I feel like on one of our very first pods in the off season. So we're talking about like a month and a half ago, maybe at that point. And it was part of a not published YouTube video that I had said where I was very happy to trade away Mark Andrews in dynasty leagues. I actually thought Mark Andrews as a landing spot to the Commanders before they re-signed Zach Ertz was a really good place to be. And you could kind of let Ben Sinnott, who they drafted early last year, develop into that mold. The Ravens do this because of what you mentioned, the financial ramifications. They've already completed their roster build, more or less. They're not going to be adding significant free agents. So right now, the Ravens can largely operate with Mark Andrews on their team. Like, it's almost been budgeted accordingly. Now, there's obviously some free there's availability to do other things during the season, certainly at later points of the offseason that maybe we're not accounting for. But that, I think, can be funny moneyed with restructured of contracts if it was ever serious. So in my mind, I actually don't think it's as urgent to move Mark Andrews as maybe you're implying here. Other than Eric DeCosta has now on 2 separate occasions had the chance to dismiss a trade for Mark Andrews and almost went out of his way to not do that, to keep it open out there. So I would assume a cap, like the trade capital for him, would be somewhere maybe like a conditional 6th round pick, like a swapping of it to eventually equal out to 6th round value. The Ravens are really good at that. They have a bunch of compensatory picks coming next year. You could do a lot of the stuff where, all right, well, I want to get up higher in the 3rd round. I'll give you my 4th round. Like there are ways to accomplish that in a team acquiring Mark Andrews. So I kind of believe that if there's a Mark Andrews move, it happens after the draft when they sort of assess what is the secondary free agent market and what do we need to have available. I don't know if it's going to happen, but the other part of this is it's actually a really tight end deep class. You got the top end guys like Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren, who are both 1st round picks in my mock draft that I published, but Christian Arroyo has been getting a lot of buzz. I almost put him in at pick 32 to replace Dallas Goedert, but there's probably 3 or 4 other guys that you could actually say the Ravens, who have always had a propensity to draft tight ends early, could find the replacement to Mark Andrews alongside Isaiah Likely in the 2nd or 3rd round if they really wanted to.
Yeah, I guess my line of thinking is, do you want to use this as a bargaining chip for this current draft? And you don't think that's necessarily a point of emphasis for the Ravens?
I think there are enough free agent veteran tight ends out there or were out there during various points of the offseason that and this Mark Andrews stuff has been known that if you wanted to make that move happen, the Ravens have been readily considering to do so at any point. So I don't think they're waiting to the NFL draft. There wouldn't be any incentive in my mind to do so. So no, I mean, like Evan Ingram went for a little bit cheaper than I think a lot of people are expecting to the Broncos. And maybe that'd be the best case example if you acquire Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is a different player, obviously, but the caliber of tight end is similar. And I think it just kind of shows the market for that position isn't as hot as maybe you would have been expecting 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, similar age to Evan Ingram, I think that is a pretty reasonable, comparison as far as, looking at what that next deal, might end up being for Evan Ingram. So it's tough for me to envision, like when you're mentioning, looking at the free agent market, do they need to go shopping for another tight end, right? Do you have the natural replacement? Are you comfortable with Charlie Kohler just got to be in the number 2, right? It's like they've had this luxury of essentially having 2 really good tight ends over the last couple of years, and we've kind of gotten used to that just being the case in Baltimore. But I don't know that if they trade Mark Andrews, you got to go out and add any real significant depth there.
No, and again, I think you could actually accomplish that in round 3 or round 4 of the draft. And maybe that's where, again, you move Mark Andrews to move up. It would be kind of apropos to go ahead and draft his backup replacement in that instance. But there's part of it, too, that the situations are obviously completely different. But the Packers at some point had to see what they had in Jordan Love before the 5th round extension sort of kicked in. Like they were contractually obligated to make a decision as to it. There's a little bit of, hey, if we really think Isaiah Likely is the guy, we could sign him to a deal right now. Let's just say like 3 years, $30 million. $10 million for a really quality tight end is super cheap. We saw McBride go for 18, $20 million. I would imagine if I'm Isaiah Likely's camp, I'm holding out for a better deal because once I know I'm in position to do so, I'm going to excel. And in that case, the Ravens are incentivized to sort of get that process started early. That can't happen until Andrews is gone. So it's a twofold thing. You free up money and you get yourself in a spot to theoretically get a player you like cheaper sooner. That is a win for every single NFL franchise, no matter what the decision might be.
All right, let's get to the mock draft, Joe. We will make this almost exclusively an NFL draft show. We are, as we're recording this, under 8 days away, essentially, from the NFL draft. You're going to be on the scene in Green Bay. I will ask, are you going to be there the entire weekend? Like, what is your schedule looking like?
Yeah, and this is actually really important for the listeners. Notably, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a podcast either Tuesday or Wednesday. It actually might be Tuesday. RotoWire was able to get, I guess, myself and Kevin O'Brien, who's going to be also there for us at RotoWire, we're able to actually get NFL media credentials. So there is an event Wednesday that's going to be going on throughout most of the day where we're interviewing players. I don't know, Nick, if you and I will have time to actually do a podcast Wednesday. If it would be very late into Wednesday, we might get some cool snippets or things that I found out at the there's value to it. But I will be there Wednesday, all day Thursday, all day Friday. And I'm going to be with my family actually doing a lot of the NFL draft tailgate events on Saturday. So my wife and my son, who's 3 years old, I'm excited to do that. I have some friends do some like backstage setup for events as well. And not that I'm trying to flex to get access necessarily, but let's just say I'm going to leverage every friendship I possibly can to get to enjoy that experience. So it's going to be an entire weekend thing for me. We have content going out Thursday from a video perspective for every skill position player drafted both on our social media and our RotoWire Fantasy Football platform. Friday, I will have a day 2 breakdown of all skill position players I've done now for the past 3 years. Saturday, I get to rest. I get to have some fun Saturday and let the other experts, many of our experts at RotoWire, kind of cover things. But it's going to be packed week, which I can't wait for. I'm super excited.
Nice. Well, I will be on a flight to Vegas on Wednesday, so if we're going to get an episode,
definitely Tuesday.
Have to do it on Tuesday next week. So keep an eye out for that. Excited to be at the Circus Sportsbook watching the draft, but at the same time, kind of wish I was with you out at Lambeau. It's going to be a hell of an experience, man. It's going to be awesome. Looking forward to watching it from afar. All right, let's talk about your mock here. And we got to mention the number 1 pick, Cam Ward. As I was watching the Warriors Grizzlies play-in game last night, I'm on my phone, got the 2 screens going, and I'm just seeing all this. Like, Cam Ward is playing Fortnite, and he's just essentially dropping hint after hint after hint on stream. That
he said Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears are a top 4 running back group in the NFL. It's like, Cam, way to go. You've already got this PR thing down. You are set, Cam. Thank goodness for you.
You talk about me and being media trained. Yeah, he is. He's ready to go. So do we even need to talk about this? Are we ready to lock it in? Cam Ward's going number 1.
Not only do I think it's a complete lock that Cam Ward goes number 1, I actually think it's chalk 1 through 5. Okay. I think 1 through 5, you could look at the top betting odds right now out there, and whether it be on DraftKings or FanDuel, both partners at various points for us. That's effectively how I do things. I would not personally draft Travis Hunter number 2 overall if I'm the Browns. I actually think Abdul Carter adds a lot of value to Myles Garrett, which you kind of want to have if he's now a $40 million player like he is. And Myles Garrett will make Abdul Carter better. But right now, there is so much smoke about Travis Hunter going number 2 overall to the Browns that's hard to ignore. His betting odds to be number 2 overall have nearly doubled in terms of like value over the past, I would say, week or so, maybe 4 days. People must know something. This isn't a Reddit post that has Will Levis going number 1 overall. There's real smoke, I think, and I'm assuming there's fire. So Travis Hunter going number 2 overall. By default, that makes Abdul Carter number 3, unless the Giants get completely blown away by the Patriots. That feels like a very easy layup. And then you can quibble about what the Patriots should do or want to do at 4. There is a fluctuation point at it, but I just think it's going to be Will Campbell. Maybe it's Armand Membu. They're going to take an offensive lineman and likely a tackle. They are the biggest losers in this scenario because they miss out on a blue chipper and don't technically get positional help. But I would argue, and I do in the mock, that even if Will Campbell is just a really good guard or a serviceable tackle, there is such a dire need to improve the totality of that offensive line. You just got to do it. And this is a Packers philosophy draft, given Elliott now is your effective general manager, Elliott Wolf. That's what the Packers would do in this scenario. I would hate it. That's how I know it's the right decision, because I would not very much enjoy how that would operate. So I think Will Campbell goes number 4. And unfortunately for you, you've grimaced a few times when we've had this conversation on different airwaves. I think your Jaguars stick with defensive tackle Graham from Michigan as kind of like the interior bulldozer. And it feels like the best player available for any schematic build. And we also know the new general manager for Jacksonville comes from Los Angeles. Really watched Braden Fisk. I think it's underrated in terms of this discussion last year. That makes a difference to the defense, can improve every position. So I think 1 through 5 is basically chalk from the draft board.
Yeah, I'm learning to accept that the pick will likely be Mason Graham. And
what do you want them to do? I mean, let's
trade down. Trade down.
Okay, well, if that's not available,
then I'm fine with it. I'm fine with Graham. I'm fine with Membu. If it's just an infrastructure draft for the Jaguars, that's fine. That feels like that's what they need. But it's like that's what they always need. They have so many needs that you go in. Every fan base, you want receiver. You want a flashy cornerback, or you want a running back. Like, no, do I want Ashton Jeanty on the Jaguars roster as a Jaguars fan? Yes, that would be fun. Do I want them to burn the number 5 overall pick on that? No, I don't. I'm still maybe the last Travis Etienne supporter out there. It's like you have viable
Travis Etienne podcast, bud.
Yeah. You have viable running backs on the roster. I don't want them to take Jeanty. Yeah, and it's also easy for me to say, trade down. Get a bunch of picks. Like, everybody's thinking that, right? If you don't like the player available, but no, bolster the interior defensive line. You're fine on the edges right now. You can always use offensive line help. This is a team that's tried to build that offensive line really for the most part through free agency. And you're just you're just cycling in like these replacement level veterans every year. And it feels like nobody's really made a difference. So if you can land a franchise tackle, even if it's not the next Orlando Pace, if you can just get like a top 10, top 15 tackle in the league, we'll take that down in Jacksonville. But yeah, I'm learning to accept that this will probably not be a flashy first round necessarily for the Jags. Mason Graham, by the way, minus 135 to be the number 5 overall pick. So if we are to believe you, Joe Bartel, this draft starts at number 6, a pick currently held by the Las Vegas Raiders. So what do you think they do there?
So everyone assumes it's Ashton Jeanty. I mentioned that as well in my article. You could talk about the Pete Carroll influence that he wants as Marshawn Lynch. You can reference Chip Kelly and what his offense have done, really quality running backs. And I'm just going to counter and say this team doesn't get the luxury to take a running back at 6 overall. I think Ashton Jeanty, I don't know if he's quite he's probably a top 10 overall prospect in this draft. He's a really, really good player. It's not just, oh, well, this is a philosophical thing for the Raiders, and they want to establish the dominance in the ground game. Like, Jeanty's one of the best players in the draft, but it's still incredibly rich when you could argue their offensive line isn't very good. They don't have any other weapons besides Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. No idea really how the quarterback position is going to operate. And that's just offense alone. We can go the whole sort of a gambit on defense too. You can't take Ashton Jeanty at 6 right now if you're the Raiders. I firmly believe that. Again, right now he's the odds-on favorite. I want chalk 1 through 5. It would tell me I'm wrong to discount the chalk again here at 6. I really think the Raiders will draft a guy like Will Johnson, cornerback for Michigan. There's a lot of injury concerns with him. That's partly why he's fallen to this point. Like, if you were to do this mock 2 months ago, Will Johnson probably would have been up in the Browns, Giants, Patriots range, because that's the talent he's supposed to be. That's not conventionally where he goes. If you look and consume a lot of these mock drafts, it's more like mid-teens. I think if you go back to, hey, Pete Carroll wants his Marshawn Lynch, how about he gets his Richard Sherman too? A just incredible secondary player that makes a difference along that defense. You are getting a star player on paper if everything works out for the Raiders. And again, I don't know how much the Tom Brady influence matters, but the alumni thing, I think that you're just trying to draw any sort of line or tidbit to something and make it stick. So it's a narrative deal, but I do think Will Johnson actually makes total sense for me at number 6.
So if you're a team like the Raiders, I'm not going out on a limb to say that they have multiple needs. How do you factor in the opportunity cost, I suppose is one way to put it, of you're trying to balance those needs? And if you go corner at 6, you still need a running back. Are you doing that calculation of, okay, well, let's say we take Jeanty at 6 and we still need a corner later on, the quality of that corner that we might get, whether we trade back into round 1 or we target that position in round 2 or 3, there might be a bigger drop off at that position than there would be at running back, which maybe more than anything comes down to a question that I would actually love to hear your opinion on, because maybe I'm not seeking out the right areas, but we just talk about Jeanty like he's on his own tier, which he is in terms of this draft. But like, how much better is Ashton Jeanty than TreVeyon Henderson or Quinshon Judkins or Omarion Hampton?
That really is the crux of this question.
It is.
And it's one that I've thought through quite a bit, because you'll be like, all right, not you, but Ashton Jeanty is this can't miss prospect. Well, wait, I thought Bijan Robinson was too. And hold on, Saquon Barkley was viewed that same way, and Ezekiel Elliott was. There's still, I was going to say Todd Gurley, but sure, Leonard Fournette, Mr. Jags fan, I get that. Melvin Gordon was a first-round pick. Like, you can go through these list of guys. First-round running back is rare. A top 10 running back is even more rare, but we have seen this before. And Jahmyr Gibbs most recently for the Lions too, who they were pretty aggressive in targeting him, allegedly liking him more than Bijan. I don't know if I really buy that, but whatever. I think Ashton Jeanty is a similar plane of prospect to Bijan Robinson. What that means is I probably would like Bijan on certain teams. I think Ashton Jeanty in certain schemes makes a lot of sense. Jeanty overall is really good. I made the case in the mock draft, and I'll say it here too. The value of Ashton Jeanty isn't just that he's a really good running back, but I think he is so good at reading offensive lines and setting up defenders that he actually makes your offensive line overall better. Like with the Raiders, who I think have at best a top 20 offensive line in the league right now, you could say maybe Jeanty setting things up would make them play better than what the skill might be. There is value to doing that at number 6 overall. I really, really like the secondary pieces of this draft at running back, whether that be Quinshon Judkins, whether that be TreVeyon Henderson, who's been my guy really since early February. I have not really lost any love for him. There's a lot of people that talk about Johnson as well from Iowa that can make a difference. He's more of a plotter, but you could find schematically lots of different teams where that lands too. Omarion Hampton is conventionally considered a second-round pick. The gap between Jeanty and I think even running back 5 is not nearly as consequential as people are saying. And again, I want to be clear. It's not because Jeanty is bad or that I think Jeanty is not near the level of Bijan Robinson. It's just that we are not acknowledging enough what running back 4 through 6 is in this class too. And that's where I'd rather do it, where you could have a lot of corners or secondary pieces. Again, if the Raiders were to flip this around, they take Jeanty at 6, you probably could have a Malachi Starks possibly fall there. I like him a lot as a safety. I have him going at the end of the first round. You got to always assume Georgia guys are really good players for the most part. Makes a lot of sense. There's the Amos cornerback as well too, who's widely considered like a top 40, top 45 cornerback too. Will Johnson can be even better if you are not concerned. I have no idea the medical information. If I had access to doctors like that, maybe I could more conventionally tell you if Will Johnson should be there. But on paper, that cornerback is way better. And I would much rather them partner with running back 4 or 5 early in the second round or possibly late first.
All right, the New York Jets at number 7. You have them going with Membu out of Missouri. We're not going to go pick by pick here and do like 5 minutes on every team, Joe.
Yeah.
But when we have a non-fantasy relevant pick, I will ask you: did you consider any other more premium position or skill position players, I should say, for the Jets at 7?
Yeah, so this is my first mock that I've done, at least published on RotoWire. I've played along and done a lot of these things with friends and family over the years. I always get really annoyed when people deliberately hold off on a player to then have them go to the situation that you really want them to. That really pisses me off because that's not how it works in the NFL. It's like, oh, it looks great on paper. That's not how it goes. So I think everyone would conventionally be like, oh yeah, Tyler Warren would be a great spot for the Jets. I really believe with a new head coach, new general manager, you're afforded a certain luxury and a runway of sorts to build a roster. To get a third first-round offensive lineman will make you the Dallas Cowboys of the AFC in terms of what you're investing in. And by the way, they've largely hit those. I understand the one that went to the Eagles and did well. I'm blanking his name right now. That's the lone not success in terms of this, but I think their offensive line becomes really good. And then you're playing to strengths. A Justin Fields 2-year, $41 million contract is not at all committing to that quarterback position next year. It's so easy for this to be a story come 2026. Well, the Jets have their offensive line in place. Now it's just about getting the right quarterback. This draft class, not the answer to do so. Next year, possibly. Or the Jets could kind of run back what they did this year, where they analyze the free agent market, figure out what works best for them on a short bridge, and keep operating there until you get it right. I would not have the Jets be aggressive and draft a quarterback they shouldn't, even though I think there will be 4 in the first round. This team is not one that I consider to be a quarterback spot, nor do I think they take number 7 overall on Tyler Warren. That seems to be a bit aggressive in my mind.
All right, so we talked about Ashton Jeanty. You did not have him going to the Raiders at 6. You do have him going number 8, but not to Carolina.
Yeah, I have the Cowboys trading up. One of 5 first-round trades in my mock. That seems probably pretty aggressive to what I read of other mock drafts. If you look at the history of the NFL, though, that's not nearly aggressive enough. Over the past 3 years, within the NFL draft day 1, or even a week before, 22 first-round pick trades have happened over the last 3 drafts. So that I have 5 in here, I think represents sort of a trend we've seen. And I really believe this is going to be an aggressive draft for teams in the middle teens to jump up because it won't cost all that much. But if you're saying a team trading up with you at number 5 for Jacksonville, there's just enough draft capital that, at least on the surface, if you're repeating historical trends, I don't know why a team would do that. To get a Jeanty, to get a Membu, who's probably tackle number 3 or 4 in most classes, to get Graham from Michigan, no one's like dying to get these players. So to go up and get to 5 is much different than the Panthers at 8. And especially for the Cowboys, who sit at 12, that's all it is 4 picks. So let's just say play it out. And you can do this. I did the same thing using a number of different trade models out there. But I think it's the Stuart Hill one, for example. You're having the team pay about a 2.5% to 3% higher tax to go do that. I think that fits historical trends. There's different variations and when trades happen. But in my mind, the Cowboys giving up what I had, like a 3rd and 6th round pick, I think, to go ahead and get up to that spot. Maybe it was like a 3rd and 5th, and then you swap a 6th rounder. I would do that if I'm the Cowboys, because we know that organization has valued a top 10 running back. They know what to do with that with Ezekiel Elliott. And in the case of Jerry Jones, I don't know if he'll be around for the totality of Ashton Jeanty's first-round career. So by that point, you can make decisions afterwards. But that is a very Jerry Jones move, and Jeanty would make that offensive line better. If you're the Panthers, who have a clear need for defense, well, this is a bad draft to do it at number 8, because there's a lot of guys that all feel very similar from 8 to 28. And if I can get a bit of draft compensation to move back and really not have my preferred player on defense affected, you do that every time, even if you're taking back a little bit less in a trade than history would normally say.
All right, so let's move down a little bit. You got Tyler Warren going at number 9. Another trade, one of many, many trades in this mock, including 3 in a row, Joe, from picks 8 through 10. So tell us where Tyler Warren is actually landing here. It's not the Saints.
It's not the Saints, and the Saints conventionally are considered to be a quarterback landing destination at number 9, whether it be Shedeur Sanders or Jaxson Dart. I would believe it's Jaxson Dart over Shedeur, but right now Shedeur is the favored person on the betting odds spot. Tyler Warren is the preferred favorite or target for the Colts right now, looking at the sports books. And I think if that's the case, we know the Colts wanted to be aggressive last year and getting Brock Bowers could not do so. This general manager group and front office staff, who knows if they'll be around next year. I would assume the Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson experiment will not work out well, but who knows? I like Shane Steichen a lot. I have sold some stock, but not all of him in terms of a head coach and play caller candidate. Tyler Warren is a uniquely gifted athlete, can be used in unconventional ways, as we saw for Penn State last year. And we know the Colts love their tight ends. And I would think if you are drafting Tyler Warren, but also trading up, this matters in NBA all the time, and I think it actually is going to matter too in the NFL. If you are giving additional picks to confirm that this guy matters to your offense, that might tell the coaching staff, you need to use him a little bit more differently than Mo Ali Cox as a blocker and red zone specialist. Tyler Warren is good enough that he's going to warrant that anyway. I firmly believe that's going to be the case. But the extra draft capital to move up and do so, I would hope tells the coaching staff they need to kind of commit to this. So whether it be Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, we hear all the time, like when they drafted Andrew Luck, they also drafted Kobe Fleener in the second round. Get your young quarterback a tight end. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. So I think Tyler Warren actually is a great place. And again, you're only moving up 5 spots to go ahead and make this happen. Does not come across from a draft capital perspective as too consequential.
Yeah, got to get some weapons for Daniel Jones, man. That's what it comes down to if you're the Colts. All right, number 10, another trade. This time you have the Cleveland Browns getting back in the mix. So that you haven't taken Travis Hunter at number 2. They trade back up now to number 10 to take
Shedeur Sanders. And so let's be clear. This is the Chicago Bears selection. I have no idea if the Bears want to do this. This feels very Ryan Polsey in that he takes advantage of a stupid organization and just willfully steals everything from them. In my trade mock that I have here, and again, it's to pick 10 from all the way up from 33. That's 34. That's a pretty big deal. It would be setting this year's second, this year's third, next year's second, next year third. There's no first round pick involved in that. If you're the Browns, I think that makes sense. I don't think the Browns, even though it feels like Andrew Berry has one more year as general manager for the Browns, if that, they can't just literally give away the farm to go ahead and get this. It also feels like it's setting the stage for Deion Sanders to be the head coach next year of the Browns if things go woefully wrong. Because in this scenario, you have Travis Hunter at 2 and then Shedeur Sanders at 10. I really only think there's a few teams that could draft Shedeur Sanders. I think it's the Browns. I think it's the Saints. I don't think he's a Steeler. I don't think he goes to the Giants. You could maybe talk me into the Rams as well if Shedeur Sanders are to fall to a certain point. Because there are only a few teams in a 32-team league that I think makes sense for Shedeur Sanders, you don't have to be super aggressive to trade up for him. I picked 10 because it feels like a very Bears thing to do, not so much a Browns thing to do. I mean, the Browns being dumb and making a trade all the way up to 10 for Shedeur Sanders is a Browns thing to do, but the Bears capitalizing on this and really getting value when this isn't a great spot to be number 10, this draft isn't great, that makes a lot of sense. I actually think Kevin Stefanski will use Shedeur Sanders really well. You think about all the quarterbacks that he's had over the years for the Vikings and Browns, a not so mobile quarterback, one that processes really well, gets the ball out really quick. That's uniquely good for Kevin Stefanski. So I think that organization will value it. I also think narratively, they're gonna benefit from getting both Colorado players on their team. People are going to talk about the Cleveland Browns. And we've seen Jimmy Haslam for the Bucs care about that. I think Jimmy Haslam for the Browns will care about the same way as an owner. So I feel really certain the Browns will trade up Shedeur Sanders. I don't know if it's 10, but I think that one makes sense if you're trying to leapfrog any other potential suitors for him if the free fall continues.
Well, that was going to be my question is, it's not, you have to pick out a position, of course, for them to trade up to for the purposes of a mock draft, but is it about in your organization or reorganization of these picks, is it about jumping the Saints, who in your mock are now at 14? You got to make sure you get ahead of Pittsburgh at 21. Like, why 10 specifically? Why not target a lower pick? Like, who are you trying to outrace for Shedeur Sanders?
So again, 22 first-round pick trades have occurred over the past 3 years. I actually don't think it's about jumping over a team, but jumping over teams that could trade up. And I look at the Panthers, who in this mock would have potentially been able to trade on candidate twice at 12, still getting a pass rusher they like. The Dolphins, who we've heard about dealing Jalen Ramsey or somebody else at 13, I think they could easily trade down into the first round. I don't think the Saints, if they were to make one move down, would make down 2. But the Falcons, for example, at 15, another spot where I think very easily, there are so many teams in that mid-teen range that if you're saying, hey, the prospect we like isn't much different than 10 prospects later, I have to imagine a lot of boards are set pretty similarly.
Yep.
You just make that move every time, even if the draft compensation isn't crazy relative to what we've seen over historical precedent. So I go back to the Bears because I think we've seen Ryan Poles pitch that to the fan base as how much of a win it is and how smart he is. And we think he cares about that so much. And I would assume the Browns will be the team aggressive enough to do so and have the earliest second round pick to be valuable in that context.
All right, so now that we're beyond the top 10, we'll hit the gas a little bit here. You got Michael Williams going to San Francisco at 11. Carolina, after trading down, they get Jalen Walker, a badly needed defensive piece. Miami stays at 13. They get Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon. And the Saints, who traded out of the number 9 pick, still get a quarterback at 14.
And they get the guy that I think is preferred in Jaxson Dart at number 14. I want you guys to read the mock. Go to my Twitter at JB Fantasy Sports. Go to RotoWire. If you don't have a RotoWire subscription, rotowire.com, code ROTO15 gets you 15% off that. It's a great deal right now, especially with the week leading up to the NFL draft. We have some made for prop bets and different content coming out, not just from me, but from Mario Puig, John McKechnie, Jared Donabedian, Jim Coventry. We're going to get you guys set over the next week. So rotowire.com/roto15 gets you that 15% subscription deal off. I think if you're Kellen Moore and you're like, all right, I have at least a 3-year window. I know they all sign 5-year contracts or whatever it is, but you have at least 3 years to make this team work. What quarterbacks has Kellen Moore worked with over the years? Well, he's worked with Dak Prescott. He's worked with Justin Herbert. Most recently worked with Jalen Hurts. There's one quarterback that fits that mold even better than Jaxson Dart, but theoretically, a guy that's pretty mobile, not super mobile. I think people overrate Jaxson Dart's mobility. Has a super strong arm. I think has been a successful enough multiple year starter in an SEC team. That stuff does matter to NFL teams. I don't know if it matters so much to me, but all that stuff matters at least a little bit. That plays well to a guy that wants to build quarterbacks. And all this Derek Carr nonsense that we've heard about, whether it be true or not, or reported by Derek Carr's side of things, or if it's anything else, I don't know. It seems clear enough to me that the Saints want a quarterback and want either competition to Derek Carr or the heir apparent to Derek Carr. So I think Jaxson Dart, getting him at 14 is a complete win. I wrote this in the article. I want to be clear. I will not be gaslit into believing multiple teams want to trade it for Jaxson Dart. They could sit at 14 if they really wanted to be aggressive, move up one with the Dolphins. There are not multiple teams that desperately view Jaxson Dart as a first-round pick. There just aren't many teams left that have that sort of utility to do so. So I think the Saints can stay pat at 14 and get the guy that they might be preferring at the quarterback spot.
Talking through Joe Bartel's mock draft, which you can find over at rotowire.com, went up this afternoon. Joe, you got a trade for a team that does not typically make these kind of trades, certainly doesn't often make these kind of picks. The Green Bay Packers coming up to 15, trading with the Falcons, where they will take Tet McMillan. So you got McMillan going 15. You got Matthew Golden going with the next pick to Arizona.
I'm going to be accused as a fanboy, and I think it's rightfully so. Yes. As a Packers fan, is this the dream scenario? Yep, pretty much so. That would be great. That Tet McMillan falls to 15 is not a shock to me at all. And that the Falcons, who have, I think, either the fewest draft picks or the second fewest behind the Vikings, trade out of 15 at any number of spots, completely makes sense. Like, you look at this, and there has to be some trades that make Tet McMillan fall to that point, but there isn't anybody 1 through 14 that desperately needs a receiver. So that Tet McMillan, who already has the prospect profile falling a little bit, didn't do well at his pro day relative to expectations, didn't perform in the combine. I'm not shocked by that. I am convinced, and maybe this is me just talking this into trying to make this occur. With the draft in Green Bay, the Packers are going to do something unconventional. In the first overall at pick 23, where they currently stand, whether it's trading up to draft a receiver, the national stage doesn't come to Green Bay very often, and I think they want to capitalize it, whether it be with a new ownership group or just kind of philosophical change. The roster overall, they don't have room to take on 10 more draft picks like they normally do. Like, I think there are already like 44 players that you can kind of already bookend and confirm they're going to be on the roster. You can't just say they're going to trade back and get more. This has to be a point, if ever there were a point, to be aggressive and get a position of need. Christian Watson probably won't play at all this season. Tet McMillan literally walks in 1 for 1, fills that void, if not earlier. And Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, both unrestricted free agents this year. you can kind of just let Christian Watson walk, let Tet McMillan do the same thing at a cheaper price tag. So I really feel strongly that if you're sitting at 15, the Packers will be aggressive and go make this move.
I can see it. I don't know if I buy into this, hey, we have to shock the crowd because the draft is in Green Bay narrative. That goes so far against everything that Green Bay has stood for. And I will be interested to see, with Mark Murphy, stepping aside and, a new quote unquote controlling owner taking over, if we do get some sort of change. What I will ask you is this, Joe. Let's say McMillan goes, I don't know, he goes 9th or 10th. He goes to the Cowboys, whoever you want to throw him to.
Yeah.
If he's off the board, is Green Bay making a similar move for Matthew Golden, or is it McMillan or bust?
I think it's McMillan or bust. And I actually want to put this on record right now. We have the podcast here that we're airing at 3:00 on Wednesday, April 16th. If the Packers do not trade up for McMillan, we'll have to trade up. I feel very confident in that.
Yeah.
They will take Jaden Higgins in the first round, receiver from Iowa State, which is very on brand for the Packers.
That's way more likely to me.
A complete reach, not anywhere near where his draft value is supposed to be relative to expectation, still fits in the similar speed and big bodied component that they seem to want from their receiving depth chart. So I think if it's not Tet McMillan, they're going to stay at 23 and take Jaden Higgins.
All right, 17, you got Cincy going Mike Green, edge from Marshall. 18, Seattle stays put. They take Kelvin Banks, guard out of Texas.
Yeah. I don't know if it's my internet or yours.
Oh, did I drop out for a sec?
Yeah. One of our internets
right.
is having a tough time.
All right. Well, let me reset the stage for you then, Joe. So to pick up after Matthew Golden, 16 to Arizona, you got Mike Green going 17 to Cincinnati, Kelvin Banks, guard out of Texas, going 18 to Seattle, Jahad Campbell, linebacker out of Bama, 19 to Tampa Bay. At 20, the Denver Broncos get their running back.
Yeah, I wrote about it in the article, and I'll say it again. Everyone in 2021 assumed Najee Harris is going to go to the Steelers. It was to the point where for 3 weeks solid, it was like, yep, Najee Harris, just write that one down. You could do that after pick 1 because it felt more easy to project that. And I was like, no, that doesn't work that way in the NFL. Like, you don't just assume this guy's going to go there for 3 weeks and it actually happens. It did. And I think that same assumption is going to happen for Omarion Hampton. I like Omarion Hampton less than some people. But if Omarion Hampton goes to the Broncos at 20, I think it's actually one of those great landing spots, and I'll be totally justified in saying he's a 4th-round ADP right now that we see in best ball. There's a number of teams where I would say I would disagree on that statement, but Omarion Hampton right there. And also, the Steelers could be in range to draft a first-round running back too. I think it's unlikely given the second-round draft capital they traded away for DK Metcalf, but you're kind of jumping the Steelers a little bit on Omarion Hampton to the point where it's possible if the Steelers really liked somebody, they would maybe trade up with the Buccaneers. So I was not set in stone to take Jahad Campbell, even though I like him a lot. But yeah, I think Omarion Hampton is kind of a lock and play right now if he goes to the Broncos, as everyone seemed to be predicting.
21 is where the Pittsburgh Steelers sit, Joe. And Pittsburgh, I feel like, has made it pretty clear, about as clear as a team like the Steelers could make it this time of year, that they are, in fact, interested in a quarterback. We're still waiting on anything to happen with Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Steelers taking a quarterback would close that door, by the way, especially if it's the quarterback who you have them taking in your mock at 21.
There's so much nuance to this conversation. And I guess I first want to start off with people. I've made this on my Angel Fire Radio Sirius XM show last Saturday. We talked about in VSiN as well today. I think I did it on Sirius XM as well too when I did the hit with you earlier. The Jalen Milroe was invited and accepted an invite to the NFL green room come next week. The NFL has said they actually don't want to have many people in the NFL draft green room this year. They're going to actually condense it relative to past years. I know the NFL likes to do sadistic things, typically to players on the field or whatever else. They don't deliberately set up people to laugh at and watch cry in the green room. That is not the NFL's intention. They interview personnel and general managers to get a sense as to where these players are going to go and then invite them based off that process. That the NFL has decided Jalen Milroe deserves an invite to the green room tells me that I'm wrong. I had Jalen Milroe as a 4th-round pick, if that. He is clearly going higher. Even the players that have fallen down in the draft green room stuff would be Malik Willis and Matt Corral in the COVID year. Geno Smith fell down to mid to late 2nd round one year. All those guys were still 2nd-round picks, way high, or 2nd or 3rd-round picks, way higher than what I thought Jalen Milroe would be entering this process. I guess Milroe impressed the coaching staff at a dinner before the Alabama Pro Day a couple weeks ago. And there's just been a lot of smoke around Jalen Milroe being a potential candidate for the Steelers now for the past 5 or so days. I can't ignore that green room invitation. I think that matters a lot. I would much rather say the Steelers trade up back into the first round to draft him, but with no second round pick because that Metcalf trade, they don't have a lot of flexibility. It might be an overreach or an overdraft, but if you really like your quarterback, you think he could be an heir apparent after Aaron Rodgers or whoever else they sign, you just got to kind of grin and bear it and take him at 21.
All right, a few more picks that I want to run by you, Joe, before we wrap this thing up. At 22, you got the other first-round tight end, Colston Loveland out of Michigan, landing with the Chargers. I love this fit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people assume it's going to be the Bengals. At 18, I have the Bengals taking an edge rusher. I would be shocked if the Bengals take an offensive player overall. And the over-under mark for Colston Loveland's at 18.5. So it is right at that Bengals spot. If that's the case, we're going to make money because Loveland's falling past that point, unless somebody's trading up. And maybe it is the Chargers. Obviously, Michigan guy with Jim Harbaugh trading for his guy, Colston Loveland. We know how much of an emphasis that tight end position is. And everyone thinks about Will Dissly and what he did really during the second half of the year fantasy-wise. But they didn't want to have Will Dissly be the sole tight end. Like there was I think they had Hayden Hurst as well that was operating at least for the first 4 or 5 weeks in a platoon at tight end. And it was only after Hurst got injured, because he always does, that you had then Will Dissly become that factor. Will Dissly is more of a blocking specialist. He can be a good receiver, that he's multifaceted, actually makes the case for Loveland. And that Loveland can do the same thing, allows the flexibility that Greg Roman and that offensive staff loves to have with their tight ends. General manager for the Chargers is also a guy that used to work for the Ravens. They've done this draft and early tight end thing before. I really, really feel strongly that if Loveland is there, that's like they're going to run up to the podium and make that pick selection.
All right. So at 23, the Atlanta Falcons, who traded back, they take James Pierce, edge out of Tennessee. Vikings go with an infrastructure pick. They take Tyler Booker, guard out of Alabama. Tate Ratledge, guard out of Georgia, goes 25 to Houston. You got the Rams. Taking Nick Imamawari. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
No, safety out of South Carolina. 27, Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M. He goes to the Ravens. Just a very Ravens pick. But you got a few running backs going at the end of round 1, Joe. So Quinshon Judkins going to the Las Vegas Raiders. We talked about them, passing on Ashton Jeanty early in the draft, taking Will Johnson all the way up at number 6. Still need that running back. They trade back in with the Detroit Lions at 28.
Yeah, the over-under on running backs selected in the first round right now is at 2.5, and the money is juiced to the over at plus 110. But notably, it was like plus 220 a week and a half ago. So clearly there's some sort of like interest in this. And in fact, if you go on DraftKings right now, TreVeyon Henderson is an odds-on favorite to be a first-round selection. One of the last ones at minus 110, but it's clear that there's something there. I really agree that Pete Carroll probably wants to establish the run and influence with that, and there will likely be Marshawn Lynch comparisons to this pick. But more important to me is Chip Kelly as his offensive coordinator. And I think Chip Kelly is going to be like, hey, this Quinshon Judkins guy, who actually ended up playing over TreVeyon Henderson, who was a presumed first-round pick even last year if he was eligibly drafted. Judkins got more playing time and more run at certain stretches of the season for Ohio State than Henderson did last year. He is more of a bruiser. He can be a pass catcher. I don't think he's as great of a pass blocker as TreVeyon Henderson is, but Judkins can easily be a 2.5 down kind of back. And I think warrants trading up in the first round. People are going to be surprised because the Raiders have one of the early second round picks. But if I am the Raiders, and I know there are multiple teams that are picking early in the second round, and I have a preferred guy that makes sense for my system, just go ahead and pay the 3rd and 6th round draft capital, maybe a 4th round, 6th round draft capital to jump up a couple spots, get the guy that makes sense for my system. And in the case of Chip Kelly, I think will have a major influence in this. And I have TreVeyon Henderson going to the Chiefs at 31. I know this would be like flashbacks to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's not what you really want to do again. But what if I told you that Henderson is a better pass blocker, could be a pretty good pass catcher, and far more explosive runner? Well, like when you outline all that, it makes complete sense for the Chiefs to do it. And we know the organization values that because they drafted Edwards-Helaire in the first round at the spot a number of years ago. It would be an embarrassment of riches of sorts. Like I know the Chiefs need offensive line help, and they're finally starting to loosen their defensive pieces to free agency. Henderson makes that whole offense better and makes Patrick Mahomes better, kind of in the way that they thought CEH would and didn't. I think this organization is going to be comfortable doing that and taking a guy that I think has like Jahmyr Gibbs 1.7 potential. He's not going to be Jahmyr Gibbs 2.0, but he could be close to Jahmyr Gibbs. That is worth a late first-round pick.
All right, Joe, we'll wrap it there. Go check out Joe Bartel's latest mock draft. It's up right now over on rotowire.com. Bold predictions for a trade-fueled first round. I don't know if you wrote that headline, Joe, but whoever did.
Oh, it's AI all the way, and AI is great.
We love that. We love that. Go check it out. A lot of fun stuff there. It's just like I don't know if I'm even looking for accuracy at this point, Joe. Like we've read so many mock drafts. Like I just want to be entertained. Or I want to dream on the possibility of what could happen come Thursday night. But very much looking forward to all of your continued coverage in the next week. We'll have another show coming for you on Tuesday before Joe heads up to Green Bay, before I head out to Vegas. Joe, I'm sure you'll be joining us on VSiN. You'll be joining us on SiriusXM as well. So plenty more coverage coming your way. And of course, make sure you keep checking this feed. John and Mario will have plenty over this final week, and tons of content up right now over at rotowire.com.